If you spend nearly 4 months driving around Borneo, it's going to be a hell of a test for any vehicle. So how did the Defender do? Well, I'll tell the story, warts and all. So I'm home again after my long trip to Borneo. Now when I set out, I had a real sense of trepidation. When you drive one of these, you get used to the usual background comments to the effect that you're going to spend more time repairing the vehicle than actually driving it and enjoying the scenery. Plus also the recent comment by a supposed expert in the field that the Defender 90 is an absolutely dreadful expedition vehicle and I'll be far better off in a mighty Suzuki Jimny. I was in the wrong vehicle and it was going to break down in any case. So how did it turn out? Well, there were problems and there were breakdowns, and I'm not going to hide it, but you expect it on a trip like this, and I'll now go through them and show exactly what happened. There were varied driving conditions, plenty of kilometres of good roads, but so many stray dogs. And we had all sorts of weathers too. There were plenty of gravel tracks. And there was serious off-roading as well. There were various driving hazards. He's in a hurry. Now this guy didn't even make the corner. And in this case, I nearly hit the dog. Now these old Land Rovers, they're old rattle buses and they're not well screwed together, and there are always things working loose and falling off. You find them in the road. And indeed that's what happened here. And the key is, if you look closely and you'll see that these two bolts aren't matching, unequal lengths and with different nuts. And these are the bolts holding on the rear climbing ladder. There's quite a bit of flexing between the roof at the top and the chassis at the bottom, and they do work loose. Thank heavens I had a pair of bolts with me. One's got an eye lock and the other's got a lock nut on, and they shouldn't fall off again. Now I did a certain amount of quite demanding off-roading, and you can always expect underbody damage, which indeed I got. And in particular, I lost my front left mud flap. This is all that's left of it. Looking at this one, oh, it's incredibly old. I'm almost wondering if it didn't come with the vehicle 30 years ago. I've now got some very snazzy Isuzu mud flaps. They were cut for me by a local mechanic from mud flaps for a light truck. I think I'll keep them. I think they add a bit of style to the vehicle. Now it's well known that all of these Defenders leak oil, and this one is no exception. And during the trip I had an oil leak in the front axle and the rear axle. And for those of you who know Land Rovers, I'm quite sure you're immediately going to say that'll be the diff pinion oil seal. But no, it wasn't. It was these little end caps here which fit over the end of the axles. And if you take them off, you see the half shaft inside. And from time to time, they do go wrong. I always carry spares with me, and I fitted them. Took about 1 minute each, I think. And looking at the old ones, I mean, they were a bit cracked and had lost their elasticity. And I checked with my records when I got home, and I see I bought them back in 2005, and they weren't even genuine parts. So I don't think I can blame Land Rover for that one. Now I expect many of you were saying, well, is that it? There must be more to it than that. And yes, there was one more problem, and potentially more serious, and it meant I had to get out my overalls, my tools, and dive under the vehicle at the front. And I'll show you the footage which I took at the time. Well, today we have a small mechanical problem. When I was doing my routine checkup, I noticed a little bit of free play on the power steering pump. Not a lot, but it should be absolutely rock solid. I've had to disconnect the pump and look at the supporting bracket, and sure enough one of the 3 bolts which attaches it to the engine block has dropped out. Now if I hadn't found this, I guess the thing would have shaken loose completely, maybe damaged the threads in the engine block. The bracket itself may of course have broken. It would have been a much bigger problem. So this shows the value of doing your routine checkups. And please say I seem to have a replacement bolt which will do absolutely fine. So I should be on the road again fairly soon. Well, the repair's now done. I'm pleased to say that the pump is as steady as anything, although I'd like to get a bit more tension into the belt, but that can wait until I have slightly better working conditions. I'm pleased to have got it done, although I'm now hot and bothered and need to go and get myself sorted out. However, far better to have caught the problem ahead of time rather than have the power steering pump falling off and creating a major hoo-ha. And before the Land Rover knockers jump in saying terrible reliability, I would point out it's a Daihatsu engine and power steering pump. So that's it. A full list of all of the problems which I encountered with this vehicle in Borneo between February and May of this year. I don't think the list was too bad actually. Maybe I should take the advice of that so-called expert and change this out for a Jimny, which is supposedly a much better expedition vehicle, but somehow I don't think I'll bother.